There are some voices you just know and trust.
It starts with the fans who live in communities all over this province. And when your Vancouver Canucks hit the ice, they're not only backed by you, they're backed by HSBC. 1981. Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake were born. The internet was first mentioned, and the Boathouse opened its first waterfront restaurant.
10, 10, 10, 10.
The next 649 jackpot is estimated at a big $10 million.
Big.
That's Al Murdoch, the Canucks voice at Rogers Arena, and for almost 4 decades, he's been heard on radio, TV, and your gaming console. The man behind the familiar voice, well, he's our next guest on Broadcast Chronicles.
Broadcast Chronicles, revealing the most surprising, compelling, and even shocking stories behind some true characters from the other side of the microphone. Here's Bruce Claggett.
From commercials to voice imaging to being heard over PA announcements during those big stadium events, Al Murdoch is one of the best when it comes to voice actors. And he can be recognized for his voice all over the world. So let's start right there. Al, tell me about those who recognize you, but only when you talk.
I mean, I do. It was funny because I go back years ago to my days when John Ashbridge and I, worked together at CKNW, and then, of course, later worked together at the Canucks. And we would get together a lot away from the rink.
Yeah.
And sit down and, and have a coffee or have a beer and chat, and we'd be sitting there, and you would not believe how many people came up to him and said, "Are you that guy that does the thing at the arena?" And John, being the lovable guy he was, yeah, I'm that guy. And so is he. He's the guy too. And so, you know what, I really, I love it when people come up and say hello and recognize my voice from whatever, whether it be radio or television or video games or voiceovers or PA, because at the end of the day, there's no calluses on these hands. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been lucky enough to be in this industry or various industries in media for many, many years. And I feel very, very grateful when someone comes up and actually says, "Hey, I recognize you from somewhere." We were in Maui a number of years ago, and this was a long time ago. I remember playing with my daughter in the ocean. We were boogie boarding and stuff, and we were having a great time, and we were yelling and hooting and hollering, and I was kind of doing a little bit of a play-by-play. Go, here comes Maddie, take the big wave, and doing all this stuff. And I came back to the beach, and my wife was saying, "Those people over there, you see those group of 5 people over there? They recognized your voice from being, out in the ocean." And they went, "That's Al Murdoch. That's the guy that used to be on the radio who does the Canucks and blah, 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 blah." So again, to answer your question succinctly, yes, I really enjoy when people come up and say hello and recognize it, because it's all I know how to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's done you well over the years. And you've done the games, you've done the voice imaging for radio stations and TV stations, you've done commercials. Is there one area that you like more than others?
Yeah, I think that there is, if you would have asked me this question 30 years ago, I might have given you a different answer. 20 years ago, I might have given you a different answer. 10 years ago. It really depends on what I actually happen to be doing at the time. And again, I've done a lot of stuff, a lot of at the same time, a lot kind of over various points in my career. There are different aspects of appreciation, at least from my end, about what I'm allowed to do. I love doing live stuff. I mean, being the voice of the Vancouver Canucks at Rogers Arena and out in Abbotsford for the Abbotsford Canucks, and all the work that I do with the National Hockey League for their tentpole events. That's a lot of fun because you get one shot at it. It's live.
Right.
You get one shot at it. You better make sure it's great. When I'm here in my studio and I've got an opportunity to self-direct myself, or even when I'm doing directed sessions with, ad agencies or producers and stuff, and they're giving you a direction, you can do it 100 times to get it exactly the way that they want it, which is great too. Inevitably, they end up taking the first take. I'll do 100, but they'll end up taking the first one. But I think, it depends what I'm doing, where I'm at. The live stuff's great because I get to work with a team. We're all there for a common goal. Not that we're not there for a common goal when I'm doing a directed voice session. It's just a little bit different. So I really enjoy them all, and they're all a little bit different. Video games, for an example, all of the games that I've done for EA Sports over the years, those are long, drawn out processes. Those are 6-7 hour a day things when you're repeating stuff over and over and over and over again until they get it just right, or they give various takes to send to producers to decide which ones they like. So that's a different process. Sometimes you go in and you'll do a session, it'll take 10 minutes. Sometimes you'll go and you'll do a session for a commercial or a narration, and it'll take 2 hours. So, at the end of the day, it's really about getting that mindset in. What exactly does the director or producer or client want, and you do whatever you can to give them that.
At what age did you know that you wanted to make a living off your voice? Or did you ever know?
Oh, I knew relatively early. Whether or not I was thinking about making a living at the age of 6, I don't think I was. I just thought it would be a lot of fun. I mean, I've told this story hundreds of times, but I'll try to keep it short. I was 6 years old. My dad worked for Canadian General Electric in Canada. And I was born in Winnipeg, and we were living in Winnipeg at the time. And my dad would bring home all the new gadgets, all the new, and again, we're talking, early 70s here. So my dad would bring home the latest record players or the latest transistor radios, in all of its forms. And he would kind of test them on myself and my sister. And I remember him bringing home this small little transistor radio in a leather case with a little bit of a handle on it. And where the speaker was, the leather was all etched out, and it didn't even have FM on it. I think it only had AM on it. And I remember taking that radio, because it was portable, throwing some batteries in it, attaching it to my bicycle handles of my bike, and riding around, Winnipeg, listening to CKY, which at the time was the big boss, top 40 station, and listening to those voices coming out. And it was an instant connection for me. I thought those voices were talking to me and me only. And once I had that connection, I knew from that age of 6 that I was going to do something with my voice. Didn't know quite what yet, but that's when Dad started bringing home the microphones, and that's when the tape players and all that kind of stuff. So from that age of 6, I started recording myself and trying to emulate those people that I was hearing on the radio. And then years later, of course, right out of high school, ended up getting my first job in radio. So that was I knew it. I didn't know if I would make a dime at it. Really didn't care at that point. But I knew that I fell in love with communication.
You and I, we both grew up in the 70s, and I remember turning on the TV. It seemed to be the day of the voiceover. I mean, ABC and, some of the great imaging voices back then had an impression. Do you remember those? Were you imitating voices at the time? And did you have heroes?
Absolutely. I mean, at that young of age, I didn't know the names, because there was only a few of those guys around that did the majority of the stuff. And again, in Canada, growing up in Winnipeg, didn't have too many American stations, but had we had Canadian stations, and you would find out, who was the voice of the CBC for many, many years. And you'd hear this voice and you'd kind of go, wow, that's very smooth. It's very, very corporate, very calm. It's I like a little bit of that. And then you'd hear the big imaging voices on the big top 40 radio stations that were these massive voices that were just coming from, the depths of their bodies. And you would go, oh, well, I'm going to take a little bit of that. And then you would hear, actors on television. Every commercial that would come on the television or the radio, I wouldn't be listening necessarily for the product. I'd be listening to the voice and how they brought whatever they were reading to life. So all of that kind of stuff kind of worked like osmosis for me. It just kind of went in. I was a sponge, and I still am, to be quite honest with you. And it just kind of stays in there, and inevitably your subconscious, or however your mind works, just kind of grabs that little nugget that you heard maybe 5 years ago, 10, 20, and goes, maybe I can use that for this particular script.
Right. And a lot of it doesn't age. Some of it does. Yeah. And I know that from radio. I've heard radio in 2024 that sounds like it's 1975, and I think, I don't know about that.
Well, it depends what demographic that you're going for at the end of the day, really.
Yeah,
You know what I
I
mean?
suppose.
In this day and age, the way that advertising, and even, if you're listening to radio imaging or the voice of TV stations or whatever it is, it's much less about the voice now. It's really more about what the actor or actress or, voice actor can do with what they're given. And it's not about the sell anymore. It's not about Sunday.
Yeah.
It's not about that kind of stuff anymore. It's really about human voices that can hopefully engage with the listener or viewer and get across whatever message that the client is trying to get out there.
So was there a change at some point? Because I think of the 1970s and there were big voices for sure, like big, deep voices with a big power. And that was kind of like if you said a radio announcer, we would all think of those, or a TV announcer.
Yeah.
But they really didn't connect with the average person. They were a voice of authority in their own way.
Yeah.
That must have changed over the years.
Well, certainly, and it's cyclical, in terms of that kind of stuff. And I found that when I was first trying to get into voiceover, and again, there were some areas that you're a radio guy,
we want an actor.
We want an actor, and I guess and I get why they wanted that, because maybe they didn't want this put on fake kind of voice that a lot of those guys kind of put on.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm not saying that it's not right. I mean, back in the day, that's kind of what they did, but it was the real voices that really, the ones that connected with people, even in this market. Let's just look at Vancouver and just radio as an example. The voices that really connected with people when I was growing up weren't these big, massive voices. Those were the guys that kind of did evenings, maybe afternoon drive. But it was like the morning show guys. It was the Fred Latrimos. Fred didn't have this big boom.
No, not a big voice at all.
But Fred made not only a massive living in radio, but also made a massive living in advertising, because he voiced everything. Him and Bill Weir and all of those guys at GGRP putting together all of those great campaigns for
the Kokanee commercials.
Exactly. Kokanee or whatever. Brian Frosty Forrest. At CKNW, didn't have this big booming voice, but it was a voice that people could connect with. And that was one of my biggest challenges when I kind of left radio to get into voiceovers, because I've got this voice. At the end of the day, I've got this voice. How can I make it more relatable to people so I don't come down as that authoritarian figure telling them what to do? Go buy this thing now. Dealer may sell for less. See newspaper for details. All of that kind of stuff that you would throw in at the end. So that was the biggest challenge for me, is trying maybe not to be that big announcer voice, to be able to tone it down a little bit, to be able to soften it a little bit, to almost sound like a real human being.
But you had versatility. You have versatility. You're still the big voice, but you also have the soft voice and can do it even with a radio station or TV imaging.
Yeah, I mean,
that's got to be tough. How do you do that?
And it is, but that's the challenge of the job. I mean, we'd all want a job that's just, you go to work and it's easy and you don't do much. But at the end of the day, even as a voice actor, if you're not challenged on something, you see something that's in front of you going, oh my gosh, man, I don't know if I can pull this off. But you just get this thing, okay, that get the direction from whoever's producing you, or if you're self-directing yourself at, in my studio, which I do a lot of, and then kind of send it off and kind of praying that it's exactly what they want. You want that challenge, because it's no different than being a professional athlete. The people that want to be the best at what they do, who are the ones that are there an hour early before practice? Who are the ones there an hour after practice taking 100 shots, whether it be basketball or reps or whatever they happen to do. And, and I think the people that, kind of rise to the top, or just or are consistent working in this business, are the ones that always want to try to be better. Because at the end of the day, if you fall into that kind of, well, here I'm coasting, things are going well, And I've done it many times over my career because things were going great and I didn't have to change anything. But I did find that I fell into a little bit of a, not a rut, but into a thing where this is what I do and this is what I'm known for.
Right.
Right. And my agents over the years were always trying to get me to go, listen, you got to diversify your portfolio. But at the end of the day, as at my age and our age, I know what I'm really good at. I know
what are you really good at? If one of those people came to you and said, Al, you're a voice guy. What type of voice guy are you?
Well, I hate to say this because, like for many, many years, the word announcer was really, really bad in the not bad, but in any forms, not necessarily PA or radio imaging, but if you're just looking at advertising, taking that as a whole, the announcer voice, whether it be put on and fake that, or whether it be just something that comes naturally, was kind of like, we don't want, like, I still get 15, 16 auditions a day from my agents, all over the world. And, they'll give you a brief description of exactly what they want. And then at the very end, they go, no announcer voice, like, no this,
okay,
no this. So you're kind of going, well, I know what kind of voice that I have. Can I sound like a regular dad who's talking to another dad over the fence about, spraying their lawn with this certain product that'll make it green and lush and so on and so forth? Well, I think I can. But at the end of the day, a lot of times they go to the voice that doesn't have any announcer tones or resonance, or you know what I mean? At all. And again, at the end of the day, you kind of go, this is what I was born with. I know I'm really good at, announcing, whether it be, the voice of Judy Justice, Judge Judy's. We're heading into our 4th year. When I went through the audition process, I remember the director going to me and going, Al, we heard your voice. There was nobody else that we wanted, but we want more announcer. You know what I mean?
You see, there you go, because that is the voice of authority, right? That's got to be the huge voice and natural for that show.
So, and that was, nothing made me smile more as I was going through the audition process, and it took a number of months to go through. And, at the end going, we want more announcers. Like, we want it to be, this is Judy Justice, like they want it. And because that's exactly what goes with that particular show. Now, that's not going to work for everything, but if that's what they've asked me to do, that's it, right in my wheelhouse. That's my bread and butter. That's what I've always done. And I know I can always go back to that.
What's out of your wheelhouse that you're proud of? You hit it, but you thought at first, I don't know.
Like, what's not in my wheelhouse that I ended up
that you thought was not. That's a better question. What that you thought was not there, but you did it and it worked.
That's a really good question.
That's why I do good questions.
Exactly. That's right. You're making me think now. I don't know if anything really comes to mind. I just kind of go into each project. And again, there's a lot of auditions that come in every day that I look at and go, you know what? That's not in my wheelhouse. Yeah. Like in my 30s, I would have done every audition, everything that came in. Yeah. Right. And now I'm a little bit more selective and going, you know what? That's something I think I can do. That over there, I can try it and I'll do it. And then 20 minutes in going, guess what? You know what? I'm sounding forced. It's not really what I do. I know a lot of guys that are colleagues of mine that are amazing at doing character voices. That's not my wheelhouse. I don't do character voices. No, it's just not in my. No, I could spend the next 20 years trying to hone my craft into that. But again,
and character voices are so terribly different. I remember working with Robert O. Smith. And he was a real talent, gone way too early. But he was a guy who lived those characters, and you would go into a room and you would think, what character is he doing now? Because he just loved doing that. And I've come across other character guys like that.
And there's people that really are really, really good at that, and that's what they do. But maybe they wouldn't be so good at some of the stuff that I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was never any kind of going, and I tried it. And listen, I went to a lot of auditions, and I'm on a lot of video games, but again, I'm the big voice. I'm the big voice
Yeah.
that, whether it be a big voice character or a big voice introducing, on Need for Speed track description, or 3, 2, 1, go, you know
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And that's just kind of stuff that really comes naturally. It's not that I didn't try to branch out, but I knew after certain years of trying to force things that I knew what I was really good at. So I really set my sights on exactly those avenues where I would have opportunities in.
The real neat thing is, and you mentioned you've got your studio in Vancouver,
Yeah.
but you've got reach. It's not, you're not a BC guy. You're not even a Canadian guy. Well, you are, you're Canadian, but you're able to do voice work around the world, aren't you?
I am. Yes. Thank goodness for technology. I've always embraced it. I always kind of knew where it was going. When I was in radio, even back in the 80s, when I was producing Red Robinson's show at CKNW, and I was 18 years old, Red would voice track his show. He would voice track all of
Right.
his intros and his breaks, and in his studio in North Van. Then he'd bring it to me, and then I'd do it live, with carts
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff. But again, that wasn't live, but I made it sound like it was live. So the technology, you could see back then where kind of things were going. And then, later on when I was doing my own radio shows, and then, computer automation came in, I kind of looked at that and embraced it because it made my job so much easier. I had 2 buttons to push, my mic and this other button. That's it. I didn't have to do any mixing. I didn't have to do anything. So I was like, well, it gives me more opportunity to create more
To
things.
use your instrument.
Exactly. And then when I built, this is my 3rd studio that I've built, but the technology, the way that it is now, look at you and I talking right now. It's no different than the technology really that I use when I'm doing sessions, for clients in LA or Chicago or the Middle East or wherever it happens to be. I can be live in their studios just like I was there, and that helps certainly to make the world smaller. And tap into more, revenue streams, more clients, more opportunities in all areas of voiceover. But you can see where the technology is going with, I don't know if you were going to kind of leading into AI and
Oh, I was going to
stuff,
put that at the end, but let's talk about it. Where is it going here?
I don't know. It's going to go as far as the technology will allow it to go. Will it replace voices? Certainly. There's no question that it will replace voices, or let's say, for example, in the olden days or even current days, if an actor is doing a scene and the audio is not right, well, they come back later to record what's called ADR.
Yeah.
And sometimes the actors are not available. So sometimes we get those auditions to try to sound like Brad Pitt or George Clooney or, whoever it happens to be, just to replace maybe 3 words or 4 words. Well, with AI, I mean, you can just do that right now. But will it replace the humanness, what I can bring to a script that an AI version of me can't? I don't know if it'll ever replace that human kind of. For example, I get scripts all the time, and I'll end up ad-libbing some lines around some stuff.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've always tried to do. Like, even if I'll read the script out exactly the way they've written it, and then I'll go, listen, I've got an idea here. I'm just going to throw it past you. If you don't want it, don't use it. But here's an idea. So I'll ad-lib around stuff. Well, ChatGPT doesn't ad-lib. It takes a script and it spews it out. It accesses all of the information avenues it can to get that script put together. But at the end of the day, it's blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah 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 blah. So there's really no kind of pausing.
No, there
Makes it
isn't.
different, right? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's got a ways to go before it will completely replace human voices.
Well, and this is where I'm kind of stuck with the whole AI thing. Is the field that you're in, this is for anybody, is the field that you're in creative, or is it just doing the motions? If it is doing the motions, fine, you're going to end up being replaced by AI. But if you are a singer, if you're an artist, if you are a voice artist, it's time to shine. And this is where a conversation starts. And I think AI is doing that because for years we may have taken for granted some of the emotion and human side that goes into things like speaking.
Mhm.
Speaking is simple, right? But it's not. It's
No.
not at all. There's a lot in there. There's a little bit of L in everything you do, right?
Absolutely. There's no question. And if I don't bring that, if I don't bring a little bit of myself to whatever I do, then I have not proven to myself that I can do it the way that I want to do it. And it doesn't matter what, whether it's PA announcing for the Canucks, whether it's how I announce their names. You can bring any AI in and they can try to mock what I do. But each night I change things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
Depending upon a mood. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We don't live perfect.
Yes, exactly. So whether computers are going to be able to ad lib on the fly, which at this point they can't, because they have to be able to react to something, right? Whether it be a live session for a commercial, whether it be a narration piece or a video game, or specifically live stuff, they've got to be able to react to whatever is going on at that particular time. And that's how I do my thing when we do skits at the Canucks games. A lot of the stuff is planned, but you don't know what the fan is going to do in this particular case. You don't know what's going to come out of their mouth. You don't know if I'm introducing a Hollywood actor who happens to be at the game. You don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get from them after you introduce them.
And that's a special part of it. That's where the magic comes in. And have you ever, and this brings up kind of an obvious question for me, but I'm glad I'm reminded and can ask about it. Have you ever gone into something where both you and a client have thought, boy, this is going to be the sound we want, and then something completely different comes out and you think, that's it, even better?
Yeah, and I think that's where I think the client knows what they want, whether it be, there's the client. Sometimes there's just the client. Sometimes they're the client and the advertising agency.
Yeah.
And the client and the advertising agent and the producer. And then, so the more bodies that you have in a room doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be better.
No.
At the end of the day, you've just got 6 different opinions as opposed to
cooks in the kitchen.
Well, and again, I'm not saying that's wrong. It works in some cases and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when you have a lot more voices, the sessions tend to be longer just because you say, well, Frank, what do you think of this? Okay, Jen, what do you think of this? And then they give certain awesome, directional points to help you. But sometimes, you'll go into a session. Okay, you think it's a very straightforward 30-second commercial for, I don't know, a car dealership or whatever it happens to be. And then all of a sudden you'll see something in the script. Because if it's just a straight read, it is a straight read, but sometimes you will be working with another actor on certain things. And all of a sudden he or she will get an idea, you'll get an idea, you throw it out there and it completely changes the script. And then at the end of the day, sometimes scripts have gone from being very straightforward to being completely, we've done a 180. And now, and again, whether or not they use that, they still have the one that they originally planned. They've got that. So, but then they've got 3 or 4 different other options. And that's where the voice acting comes in. I've never kind of professed myself really as a voice actor. I use my voice for a living. But there is some instances when the acting part of your brain goes in there. May not change necessarily the tone of your voice or, but it will change the way the concept originally started and sometimes where it ends.
Working with that, I want to ask you this before our time ends here, but where do you see yourself going? You're still a young man.
It was funny because I was, as I was, sitting down, turning on this, that question kind of popped into my mind about where I was going, because there's always kind of a tendency to always be kind of doing this, right?
Yeah.
And again, because you always want to make yourself better. I think at the end of the day, where do I see myself going? Well, um, you know, career wise, I've got certain career goals that, you know, a couple of things that I still, you know, want to check off the bucket list. But there's also my personal side of my life as well, and getting to an age where I see kind of my retirement, whatever that happens to be, and where I want to be. My dad passed away in January,
Oh.
and he was 88,
Hmm.
a wonderful man, a voice that it was unrivaled in terms of my respect. He never did anything with it in terms of what I'm using it for, but he had this commanding voice that could, when he walked into a room, you know, it was one of those voices that kind of, you know, you knew he was there. But he was 88 when he passed away. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm 58. I'm looking 30 years. If, let's say, I've got 30 years left, what do I want to do in those last 30 years? So I look back on my career and think, you know, where I kind of started and where I'm at now, and all of the things that I've accomplished that I wanted to accomplish, and then all of the other things that just came my way that I never even thought I would be a part of, that have ended up working out really, really well. I just thank my lucky stars that I've been able to do what I do for so long. But there will be a time, you know, over the next number of years when I'm going to be going, okay, I think it's time maybe for somebody else to maybe take the reins, you know, to do certain aspects of what I do in my career. I can always do voiceover wherever I land, you know, wherever my wife and I decide globally where we're going to retire, because it's not necessarily going to be in Canada.
Yeah.
And we kind of look at things and going, well, what do we want to do now? We've worked our whole lives and worked really, really hard, and you know, we've become successful, and thank goodness for that, and we're grateful for that. But what do we want to do? And I look back and go, I've done, I'd say 90%, 95% of what I actually wanted to do, and all of the other stuff is gravy. So
It's a good feeling.
Right. It's a really, really good feeling. And again, I'm very, very grateful for being able to do that, and also have the opportunity now to go, I don't have to do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I could retire now. I think I'm too young to retire. I know I'm too young to retire.
Well, you and I we're the same age, so I hate this talk about retirement.
Right. I mean, I don't, and some people say, well, you don't have to retire. And retirement means different stuff for different people. For me, I could do this, God willing, you know, my voice keeps up. I can do this as long as I want to do it. And I think that's what I will end up doing. But I will be doing the projects that I want to do, not that I have to do anymore.
It's great to learn more about the person behind that voice. Al Murdoch is quite the guy, and I'm guessing he'll be heard on many, many more formats in the years to come, perhaps even in some places we haven't even thought of yet.
Broadcast Chronicles is written and hosted by Bruce Claggett. Music, Follow Your Heart via Upbeat. Graphic design, Creative Shovel. I'm Sarah Mackenzie. Subscribe to Broadcast Chronicles wherever you download your favorite podcasts. This has been a BFC Communications production.